Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, I am Frederick, and on this channel, we dive deep into the world of microservices with .NET and other stuffs like Blazor, APIs, and many more. In today's video, we are going to explore two crucial aspects of modern API gateways. They are rate limiting and authentication in the YARP API gateway that we have started. Now, you might be wondering, why do we need rate limiting and authentication? Let's break it down with some real-world scenarios. Let's first talk about rate limiting. Imagine you have a popular e-commerce platform. During a flash sale, thousands of users might try to purchase the same product simultaneously. Without rate limiting, your servers could get overwhelmed, leading to slowdowns or even crashes. Rate limiting helps you control the flow of traffic, ensuring that your services remain responsive and available to everyone. It prevents any single user from monopolizing your resources, thereby providing a smoother experience for all users. How do you integrate this in our API gateway using the YARP reverse proxy? Let's see how we can do that. We created a solution already, and that is our fourth video. So if you haven't checked the 3 videos out, I have the links available in this video description. In these 3 videos, we created a solution. We added 3 projects, and the concentration here is much on the API gateway. That is where we installed our YARP reverse proxy app. What is a package? And in here, we have configured it. We've integrated request and response transformation, load balancing, and more, caching as well. So you can check the video description to watch these videos to get more insight on how to implement these features. Okay, implementing rate limiting in reverse proxy is very simple. That is a YARP. All that you need to do here is open a configuration and now give it a line of code, put the service in the program file, and that is all. Let's see how we can achieve this. So in our API gateway, you can see we have a configuration folder, and that is where we have our basic configuration file in there for this YARP reverse proxy. So on top here, all that you're going to do here is you're going to add rate limiter policy. So we're going to have our rate limiter policy. And now in that, let's say this is our rate limiter policy. Let's also have the same name for that. So this is rate limiter policy. Let's grab this, and that is for a product route. You want to do same to the other route, so you can put it also in there. That is all. Now the next thing to do here is go to the program file, and let's add the rate limiter service. Okay, so here let's have our rate limiter service in here. So we're going to say that is builder.services .add. We're going to have rate limiter, and in there let's specify options to this, and we say that this options.add so let's add fixed window limiter, and in here we want to give it a name. We make sure the name is the same as what we have specified for this. So you can specify a rate limiter for this. You can also specify the same rate limiter for this. So you can see that You can decide to use one configuration, one service for all. You can create a configuration for each of the routes that you have in here. But for this, let's maintain one for all. So we copy that and let's put this here. If you have made a video on explaining how we can use how you can configure the types of rate limiter. If I click on this options, we have concurrency limiter, we have add fixed window limiter, we have sliding limiter, and we have token bucket. I've made a video on explaining each how we can do that. So I'll put the link in this video description. If you haven't watched that, you can watch that video to get more insight on that. Okay. But with this, we're going to give a fixed amount of time which is going to be used for execution of the incoming request, and until that time exhausted, we cannot, or the service cannot be opened for another incoming request. That's how we say it's a fixed. Okay, so we have this set. The next thing that we're going to do here is we need to specify an option to this, and it should come in here. So let's say there's an option again. Now with this option, we need to add, so we have permit limits. So how many requests do you want to permit it? Let's say we have, I want to permit maybe one request for testing purpose. Okay, then we're going to have this up.window. So the time that it should take to process this number of requests, and we're going to say there's a time span that from seconds. So you want to take about 20 seconds to process one request. This is very bad. Yes, but for this purpose, you want to test and see whether this is going to work. That's the reason why we are integrating this. Okay. And aside from this, what else can we do again? Do we want to have a queue? Maybe you know that here we are having 20 seconds to process one request, which is very, very bad. Okay. But in this case, when the subsequent requests come in within that 20 seconds, what should the system do? So here we're going to say that, okay, fine. So the external requests that come in, make sure you queue them. Do you want to queue them or not? If you want to queue them, then you can go ahead and now add the queuing. How do we add it? It's quite simple. It is the same thing like we have a queue limit. You see we have queue limit. So the number of queues that you want to create, you want to put them, the number of requests that you want to align them in a queue. You can specify this in here. And also you can specify when the 20 minutes is done and it is time to process the next request. It has to go to the queue and now get the request then process. How do you want to arrange the request in the queue? So let's see, and that's why we have this we have queue processing order, and now here you can set it to older first or newest first. So the oldest, meaning the first request that came in, which will be queued as 91, has to be processed after the 20 minutes has expired. Okay, so that's what it's going to do. But with this, we're not going to integrate this, so we can comment this so to test and see whether our system or this is working. Now, in case there's an issue, in case the limit here also exceeds, or in case maybe there's more requests aside from one, then we want to reject it with a status code. So in here we can say reject status code, and that is 429, which is too many requests. Or we can say that status code in here dot too many requests, and that is 429. We have it here, too many requests 429. So we can also assign the status code in here. So as soon as you pass in more than one request, it's going to bring out the status code for you, telling you that you are overwhelming the system with too many requests. Okay, now that we are done, we need to use the pipeline. So come here, and on top of this, we're going to say app.use rate limiter, and that is all. So now that we are done with this, let's go ahead, give it a run and check it out. Alright, so it is ready. Let's make sure our postman is also ready in here. I have it open already. Alright, so you can see from here we are having our port, that is our reverse proxy, or our API gateway, that is a 7000. We have two APIs or two services, and in there we want to tackle the other API. So if I click on this, the first request is 1, so it's going to get processed, but the second request, which happened within the same 20 seconds, would have to be rejected. And we must see a status code of 2429. That is too many requests. Let's hit it and check it out. So there's an other request. Oh, so here say method not allowed. Yeah, because here it is post, we should be get. Now click on it again, and we should see the list of audits. Well, we have it. Now within this 20 seconds, let's hit on it again and then check it out. We are still getting it. Do you know the reason why? Let's check and see. Alright, let's try the product API too and check it out. So here we have our product, the next request. Alright, so here it seems like we have our caching in place, so it is skipping it. Let's go and make sure we have that set to off. We have this caching, so maybe we can. Okay. Okay, but when you come here, you see we've commented the caching already, I think from the previous video. So that is not in place. Let's find out. Let's go to this service and see whether we are consuming the configuration class that we created or consuming the app settings configuration file. So we go to our request and our response. That is where can you find this? Service response. So that is this one, to our services. Okay, so you can see from here we are taking in the configuration. And we haven't done that in the configuration. So maybe we can go ahead and undo it in there. So in order to do that, we go to our app settings. And that is where we have our route. So this route, we have our product route. And in there, we can specify the rate limiter option in here. So this is what we need to write. Let's add rate limiter option. So rate limiter, and this should be policy. So with this policy, what is the name of the policy? It is the same name as the key. So provide it in there. And now let's grab the same thing. We go to our other and let's put it in here. Okay, let's give this run again and check it out. Okay, so that is ready again. Give it another try. So we have the record again. You see we have too many requests. So until that 20 minutes is gone, is over, we cannot have another request. So we can keep clicking, sending, and we're going to keep rejecting. Let's see for the other. So if I click on send, let's check this out. The first request is successful. Subsequent ones, too many requests. Now let's go back and check if the product is working. It's 20 seconds over. So we have our product. Then click on send. Now you can see we have it. Go to other, click on send. It's still not over yet. So click on send again, and now we have it. So you can see that we've seen, or we have been able to integrate this rate limiting option into our reverse proxy. That is our YARP reverse proxy or API gateway. So now we are done with this. Let's also talk about authentication. Why do we need authentication in our API or API gateway? Authentication is like the bouncer at a club, ensuring only authorized individuals get in. In the context of microservices, it ensures that only valid users can access your services. For instance, if you are running a banking application, you don't want unauthorized users accessing sensitive financial data. Implementing robust authentication mechanism helps protect user data and maintain the integrity of your services. So let's also see how we can do that. So let's stop this from running and let's go to our program. So let's install some packages first. So on the API gateway, you want to handle the authentication in the API gateway. So right click on dependencies and let's go to manage NuGet packages. In there, we're going to install SQLite. That's what we're going to be using as a database. And also we need efcore.tools as well. So we have tools. So let's install this Microsoft.entity-framework-call.tools. Let's also install our SQLite. So that is this. Let's also get this installed. Okay. So we have these two packages installed on our API gateway. Okay, so let's go to our API gateway. Let's create DB context for this. We're going to be using an identity manager. So let's have our data folder. Let's create a DB context. So this is going to be a class, and this is going to be identity DB context. So identity DB context. Let's create this. This class should inherit from identity DB context. So I learned this should be, let's rename this to app identity DB context. Then this should come from, so let's rename this. Okay, now this class should inherit from, then we have identity user. So we need to install some package. Let's install this package. We need to also install a package for, let's see, identity user. And this should be using ASP Netcode identity. Okay, now let's create a constructor for this. Now let's pass in the option. Okay, so we are done. We need not to create any table. It's going to be created for us automatically. So you go back to our configuration. That's a program file. And in here, let's start adding what we need to add. Okay, so here let's add database connection. So you're going to say this is builder.services.add DB context, pass in identity DB context. And here we need to use an option. This option maps to, we're going to use SQLite. And with this, let's specify a database connection. And let's use demo db.db. So this is going to be a database. Let's close this. The next thing that we're going to do here is let's add identity Now the entity here, we're going to have builder.services.add identity, and then let's specify our identity user. And also we're going to be using row, so let's specify our identity row. Aside from that, we're going to add entity framework store, and in here we need our DB context in there. Then last one, let's add rows, and this row we need identity row. Okay, so now we are done with this. Let's also go ahead and add our authentication. Now this authentication is actually JWT. So we're going to say that here we're going to have first our constant, and it's a string. We're going to have our default scheme, and the default scheme is going to be JWT bearer. So with this bearer, we're going to have the authentication scheme JWT bearer default. Then let's see. Okay, so we need to install Microsoft.ASP Netcode Authentication.JWT bearer. Let's find the latest and get this installed. So now this is done, we can get default authentication scheme from this. So that is what we have in here. Now we're going to do builder.services.add authentication. And now with this, let's make sure we expose this. Then in here, we're going to say that the default scheme, it is JWT bearer default authentication. And aside from that, we can have x.default challenge scheme, and that is same JWT bearer default authentication scheme. The next thing that we're going to do here is we need to add, so let me close this line. So add JWT bearer. Let's specify the scheme that we created. So that's the default scheme, or we took. So we extracted this scheme from the identity scheme, right? Authentication scheme, and that's what we're using in here. Aside from this, let's specify an option to that. And now with this option, let's make sure we get our key from our configuration. Then, so let's encode the key. So encoding.utf8.getByte. Then with this get byte, we need our builder.configuration.getSection. And this section we need authentication. That's going to be our section. And I want to grab the key as a key. I want to grab its value. So this could be a value. Then aside from having this, the next thing we need to do here is to get our issuer and the audience. So issuer is same, so we can have builder.configuration.getSection, and the same authentication slash we have an issuer. You want to grab the value as well. Then we need to do same to get the audience. So let's see, we have our audience. Now the next thing that we're going to do here is once we have this, let's specify our options.required HTTP metadata. Let's set this to false. Let's also have an options.save token. Let's set this to true. Let's have an options.token validation parameters equal to new. Then we have our token and parameters, and in that we need to validate issuer. Let's let's make this possible. Start from this, let's validate audience, make this possible as well. Then we're going to make sure we disable this validate lifetime because I don't have any refresh token yet, so let's set this to false. And the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to provide this valid issuer. So valid issuer, and that is an issuer we have created or retrieved. Then we have valid audience, and that is what we have also retrieved. So you pass it in there. Then we have issuer signing key. Now this issuer signing key, let's get a symmetrical key of this. So we're going to say new symmetrical. Then we pass in the key that we have retrieved. So that is the key that we have retrieved. And we are done. So after adding this authentication, the next thing that we're going to do here is let's add policy. So here we're going to be using a policy. Okay. So let's say add authorization policy. Now with this policy, we're going to have builder.services.add authorization builder. Then with this builder, we're going to add policy. Now with this policy, let's say this is admin policy. Now this admin policy, we also want to specify this, and we're saying this admin policy should, okay, let's make it one here. So we're going to say that this policy that we have, and let this should be policy. So this policy dot, then we want to make sure we required an authenticated user. You must be authenticated. Aside from that, required rows. So you want to have maybe one row of admin. Then that is all. Okay. So let's also make another one. So dot add policy, and let's say this is user policy. Let's also specify this, and we are saying that this policy should also require same authenticated user and dot required row as well. So we have rows, and now with this row, you're saying you must be a user row before you can access this. And we also have this put in place. So the next thing that we're going to do is let's add our authentication. Then let's have our authorization as well. Okay, so now since we are going to expose an endpoint for registration and for login, okay, so we can get access to our token, we need to integrate controllers here. So maybe let's go ahead and map controllers. So you can say that this app.map controllers. So we map controllers in here. Okay, I think this should be before. Okay, then let's add a controller service. So we're going to say that builder.services. So dot add controllers, and that is all. So let's go to our solution. Now in here, let's right click on the API gateway. Let's add folder. Let's name this as controllers. Let's add a new empty controller. So let's choose an API, empty one. And you can give it any name you want. So I'm going to say this identity. So identity controller. Now with this controller, what we need to do here is we need to inject our user manager and also configuration as well. So let's have our user manager in here. So user manager, which takes in identity user. Then we're going to say this is user manager. Let's also have our role manager also, which takes in identity role. Then we're going to say this is role manager. Let's include our I configuration. And we're going to say this is config as well. Okay. So we have these three things in here. Now let's come to our body. And now we're going to have post. So this is post. And now with this, we're going to have our public async task. This will return I action result. So with this result, we're going to say this is authenticate. And this is going to be used for both login and our registration. Let's have our string email. We need our email and string. We need our password. Let's pass this here as parameters. We don't want to carry strings. So we're going to say that this is email. Then you're going to have password. Okay. Now in the body, let's open it. So let's make sure this and that, they are the same. Okay. So we're going to say this is user is equal to, let's have a wait, user manager dot find by email. Let's make sure we have what we need. In case the user comes in and we couldn't retrieve any data, it tells you that this user is a new user. So you want to create it. So we're going to say that if user is null, then we want to return. Let's say, okay, we're going to create new user. So that is, so we're going to have like register. And now this register is a new method. We're going to pass in the email and password. Okay. So email and password. That is when user is null. It means we're going to register. But in case the user it isn't, then we're going to return the same okay. Then that is login. This login is going to return string. That is a token. So this login, all that you need to specify here is get in this user, and this user is going to be the identity user, and close it. So here let's also create method for each. So this, hit on that, and let's generate this method. Let's also create this method for the login, and now we have these two private methods. All this for the login, it should be string, so you want to enforce that. And for this, it also should be string, so you want to also enforce that. Okay. So now let's tackle the registration. So if a user wants to register, what do we do? Let's just create it. So we're going to say there's a result is equal to. Then here you want to have a wait, a user manager dot. We're going to have create async. And with this, we're going to specify new identity user. And now with this identity user, all that we need to do here is specify the email as email coming in. We also need this username as the email coming in. And maybe we have password. So we have password in here, and that's equal to this, not email, rather the password. That is all we need to do. Now with this, so this should be this password. This should return. So we're going to say that if result.succeeded, it means user is created. Then if it is created, we want to have a look at an admin role. So let's say we're going to say that this admin role, please go and check it for us. So admin.manager.find by name async. And now here we want to check for admin as a role. So we're going to say that if this admin role is null, then what are we going to do? We want to go ahead and create it. So we're going to say role manager dot create async, and I'll pass in new identity role. And now with that, let's specify the admin in it. We create that. After creating this, make sure you add this user to it. So we're going to say this user manager dot add to row async. We have it in here. Specify the user that is coming in, and now the row that has been created now as admin. That is all. And here we're going to have else in case this person coming in here, admin row has been created already. Then what are we going to do? So we know that we cannot find any user here. I thought we were inside this login. So we have the email, right? So there's an email. So we can just grab this email. And then here we're going to say that this is an await. Let's put this in the bracket. And we're going to say this is await. We can have user manager dot find by email async. And now specify this email, which is going to get you the user. But you should check for now because it is saying it should be now, but well. You want to also make sure it isn't. So the next thing that we're going to do here is we need to check for the user row. So we're going to say this is also user row, and I wait. So we have our row manager. This not row manager. We need this manager. So dot find by name, and in this we're going to look up for user row, because here we're specifying 2 rows in it. So we're going to say that if user row is null, then we want to go ahead. We're going to say await, so row manager dot create async, and you need to specify new identity row, and now specify the user row here. After we are done with that, we can go ahead and now add it. So whether the user here is the user row is there or not. Okay, if it is there, going to get created. In case it isn't, then it's going to get added, because here, in case this is not null, it means user has been created already. And in this case, we're going to add the person straight to it. So we need to provide in the same thing that we copied. So let's grab this. So maybe here we can, let's check if we can remove unnecessary parentheses. Okay, so we can do same in here, and now add the row, and that is all we need to do. So let's use this. Okay, camel case. So we are done with our registration, and at the end of the day, we want to return successful as a string. So that is what we need to do. And now here else, then what are we doing? We want to return unsuccessful. So we can grab this, and in here we can use return unsuccessful. So we have our registration done. Let's go to our login also. Now in our login, since you have the user already created in there, what we're going to do here is we're going to extract the user info and I'll generate a token for that. Okay, so let's also grab a security key. So we're going to say this is, we have a security key, and then that we're going to say this new symmetrical security key. Let's have our encoding. So we need to also encode this. And this should come from system.test. So .utf8. So encoding.utf8 uses .utf8.getByte. And now this getByte, we're going to have our config. Now this config, we can extract authentication. Then we have a key. So this is what we need in here. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we need to also get our credential. So let's have our credential. Now this credential is equal to new sign-in. We have our sign-in credential. Do you have it? So this is our sign-in credential. Now this sign-in credential, we need to specify a security key and also our algorithm. So security algorithm .hmark256. You want to use this. And let's also get our user claims. So this claims is equal to new array. And now here we're going to have a new claim. Now with this new claim, what we're going to do here is we need to specify the claim type. So here we need an email. Now let's provide this. So we're going to have this from user.email. Then aside from that, we would also need name, right? So maybe you can also say that this name is the same as the email. Okay. Then the last one, let's also include the row. So we're going to say this new claim and claim type dot rows. Now with this row, we're going to say that await. Since we are not having the row in this user, we need to extract this from the user manager. So we're going to say await user manager dot. We can have get rows, which returns all rows of the user, and let's pass in this user. And in that, you want to extract only first or default, because here we know that we're going to have only one in there. So we can get first or default, and we are good. Okay, so we can make sure this isn't null. Then let's go ahead and now create our token. So we have our user claim. Let me create that using this. Okay, camel case. Now let's have our token. So this token that we get is equal to, we're going to have new GWT token. And we need a security token. And now within the token, let's specify the issuer. Now this issuer, we can have config. Then let's extract our authentication section. So authentication section. Then we can have our issuer. Aside from that, we can also go in for the audience. And now it is the same config. Then we can extract our authentication. Then we say this is audience. So we need to, this should be in here. I believe you haven't done what I did. So it should be in this. Okay. So we also have our audience set. Now the next thing that we need here is our claims, and we have our claims already. So we need not to worry about this. So that's our claims, and here we have our user claims. So that's our user claims. And also for expired, we're going to set this to null because we haven't added expiry date. Then let's have our sign-in credentials. We have this as credentials also set already. Okay, so that is what we need in order for this to work. Then let's close this. Okay. Then let's return, since this function must return a string, let's have a return type. And now this return is equal to new JWT security token handler. Then in that, we're going to write the token that we have in here as a token. And we're going to return it in the form of string. And that is all that we need to do in here. Okay. So we can go ahead and now test this out. So let's start this. And remember the route, it should be API/identity. Then we're going to make a post to this specifying our parameters, and that is all. So a single method is going to handle two functions. Oh yeah, we have an issue here because we haven't added our authentication section in the app settings.json. So quickly, let's go ahead and do that. We go to our app settings and let's add this section. So we have authentication with our key, and also we're going to have an issuer as an API. There's a gateway, and it's going to consume it by itself. So let's save this. Let's do it again. Alright, so this is ready, and make sure that we have gwt.io so we can verify our token and see the claims that we have both for admin and now the user as well. Alright, so I have to open my Postman, and from the headers, I have this already, so I'm going to clear this off. We're going to start everything. So this should be off. Okay, so let's see if I can get rid of this. If not, I'm going to delete everything from here. Then we start everything afresh. Alright, so I am done. Now we see we're going to make a post to this as an HTTP local host. We have our 7000 as our port. We have an API, and our identity here, it is a controller. And then we are passing our email and our password. Okay, so the first time registration is going to be an admin. So let's click on this to register. Now let's check it out. We must have successful when everything is set. Okay, so we haven't performed migration. Whoa, I believe you've done that, isn't it? That's okay. Let's stop this. And let's set our gateway as a startup in here. Then let's go to package manager console. And in here, let's add migration. So let's update database. Alright, so this is done. Now let's run this again. But before that, we have to set multiple startup projects. So click on configure startup projects. Alright, so let's set the multiple startup projects. Let's set all to start. And now let's run this. So now we're going to test this. Let's see. Now we should have no issue. Oh, I said it. Now successful. So now we're going to log in. And we must return, or it must return token. Good. So now let's see. This token here, let's grab this token. Let's go to our Postman, not our Postman, our JSON Web Token. And we want to verify and check it out. Yes. Check the row here is an admin, and that's what we need. This is a name and an email. Let's also create another one for user. So let's say here we have our user, and that is also user. Then our password is going to be user. Okay, click on this, and it's going to get created. Click on it again. We're going to have our token. So grab this. Then in here, check it. The row is what? Is user. So let's see. Now, when we go back to our system, from our configuration for the YARP, from our other API can be accessed by user. Okay, we haven't added the policy yet. Okay, so let's do that. But before we do it, you have to make sure. Let's go and get our tokens. So we have a token. This is for user token. So maybe we can grab this token in here and paste it under the user. Let's make sure we have our admin, and let's also grab our admin token. And this is our admin token. Okay. So in our configuration, let's add our authorization policy. So we can do it from the app settings and in here. So for the product, we want admin to access the product. So we're going to say this is our authorization policy. And what is the policy here? We said this is admin policy. Let's grab this. We go to the order, and we can also specify same, but this time around for the order, we want it to be user. Okay, now what we have in here, we can also do same to the configuration. So whether you're using the settings, app settings file, or using the config class that we created, we can make it happen. Now from here, we can also add authorization policy. Then this is for admin policy. Then same as here, authorization policy. Okay, this is user policy. So we can go ahead and run this. Check it out. So they are ready now. Let's see. So we're going to access our API product. When we check our headers, we have no authentication, or we can even remove this. Okay, so here, let's remove this. Okay, so we have no token. Now when we make a request to this API, we have 401, that is authorized. We need to be authorized. We are not authenticated. Now let's go and add this product API here. It is authorized to only, or is assigned to only administrator. Let's go and add our authorization. And in that, let's make sure we have our, let's use the user first to check it out. Let's make it as bearer and add the token. Now let's make another request, and instead of 401, now we have 403. It tells you that we authenticated, but it is forbidden. We don't have access to that resources. Okay, so let's go ahead and change this. Or even with this token, let's change this to other, because this is user. Change this to other, and I'll make a call, and it's going to get it because other here needs to be API/other. It's other API. Okay, so this is get. So that is get. And okay, so too many requests, and let's wait for 20 seconds. Yeah, so let's wait for that. We have to make changes to that. Now let's try this again. So from an other, and there's a user token, and we should get the record. Yes, and we have it. So this is user and admin authenticated. Now let's go and add the admin token. So that is an admin token. Let's go and add it from here. That is for admin. Now when admin makes a request to this order, it's going to be rejected because this order has a policy which requires a row of user, but this doesn't have user row. It has an admin row. So for 20 minutes or 20 seconds pass, if you make a request to this, you have 403 forbidden. Go ahead and I make order to the product, and you should have the data in there? Yes, we have it. So we've seen how to integrate rate limiting and also authentication, actually policy-based authorization in our API gateway using Identity Manager. All right, so that is all I have for you guys. If you have any issue or if you have any question, you can put it in the comment section below. Or if you found this video also helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content on .NET 8 and microservices. So catch up again. Until then, take care.